Many Magic the Gathering players ask the question, is it worth it to buy a 2022 Pioneer Challenger deck? This is Wizards of the Coast's second rendition of Challenger decks for the Pioneer format, a ready-to-play 60-card deck with a 15-card sideboard designed to be competitive right out of the box at your local Pioneer Friday Night Magic. Last year's Pioneer decks were pretty good but not excellent, but most of them were close enough to their fully optimized counterparts to be worth the investment. Though I of course found it disappointing that Wizards of the Coast charged nearly twice as much for these decks than their standard versions, which despite having the exact same number of cards, apparently use much more expensive ink. Curse you, expensive Magic card ink! So is spending nearly $50 on a Pioneer Challenger deck worth it? How competitive are these decks right out of the box? How close are these decks to their more meta counterpart? Or do they even have a more meta counterpart? Let's take a look. Just like last year, Pioneer Challenger decks contain one ready-to-play 60-card deck, a 15-card pre-made sideboard, as well as some added-on goodies like double-faced tokens, double-faced helper cards, and a cardboard box for you to put your deck in, or just throw away. The choice is yours. And just like last year, there is no code to redeem these decks on Magic Online, although these decks are for sale on Magic Online, so you can buy them digitally and in paper, giving Wizards of the Coast your money twice for one product. I know I've said it many times before, but I'll continue to say it. I feel strongly it is worth it to Wizards of the Coast to offer digital redemption, especially for a product like this. Magic Online could benefit from there being a digital redemption code, just as local game stores could benefit from Magic Online players maybe going into them to pick up this product so that they can redeem it on Magic Online, and then maybe they stay for a game, or at least pick up some card sleeves. It's a way of building a bridge between digital and paper, benefiting both customers and players, and also the makers of this game. Everyone wins, but alas, no. If you'd like this on Magic Online, you buy it there. If you'd like it in paper, you buy it there. There's no digital code. There is also no officially stated MSRP on this product, but looking at online marketplaces, they tend to be selling for about $49.95 with some variation, as we'll get to in a moment. This again is nearly double what standard Challenger decks sell for. I feel like this is just a long list, a broken record of my rants, but why is a 75-card Challenger deck for standard so much less expensive than a 75-card Challenger deck for Pioneer? Why does one 100-card Commander deck cost $40, $45, and another 100-card Commander deck cost $20? I guess I am an English major because the math just doesn't add up. If you were to buy the singles from each Challenger deck individually, how much would you need to spend to recreate what is available in the product here? Well, Izzet Phoenix would cost you the most at $123.44. Dimir Control would be the next expensive, coming in at $119.34. Gruul Stompy would run you a cool $102.12, and Orzhov Humans would bring up the rear at $96.22. However, I like to eliminate bulk from those pricings so that we get a better idea of how much value is really in here. If we eliminated all cards except those worth more than $1, Dimir Control would now be the most expensive at $100.96, with Izzet Phoenix coming in second at $95.30. Gruul Stompy would drop off to $86.66, and Orzhov Humans would go down by a whopping $20, wow, to $76.10. But these are Challenger decks, and I feel very strongly that their financial value is not the first thing we should be looking at here. The most important question to ask of a Challenger deck is not how much value is in it, but rather how playable it is competitively out of the box. That is the thesis of this product. Buy one, go down to Friday Night Magic, take it out, and play with it. How much upgrading would you need to do to improve it, to bring it close to its meta counterpart? Let's take a look and grade each deck individually. I want to start with Izzet Phoenix. Izzet Phoenix has been a top contender in the Pioneer meta for quite some time, so it's exciting to finally get a precon that sets you up to fill your graveyard up with these electric birds and then cast some spells to send a whole flock of them soaring onto the battlefield for a massive, exciting turn. Unfortunately, the largest flock you can assemble with this precon is a flock of 2, and that's only if you're lucky. That's right, the Izzet Phoenix precon only comes with 2 copies of its namesake card. Notably, the Phoenix deck also comes with 2 copies of Expressive Iteration, a card that was banned in Pioneer months ago. As has been the case with previous iterations, of banned cards showing up in precons, you are permitted to play with Expressive Iteration in your deck in a sanctioned tournament, provided you play exactly this deck list. Change so much as a single card, and the iterations must come out. In terms of how well the deck functions, a lot of what you need for a competitive Izzet Phoenix deck is in here, except of course for Izzet Phoenixes. You've got your playsets of Opt, playsets of Consider, playsets of Treasure Cruise. Almost everything that's necessary for this sort of deck. 2 copies of Thing in the Ice is a nice inclusion, given the card's $12 price tag, and the importance of the card versus aggressive decks. The mana base, dull surprise, is weak. 10 basic lands? 10? This is certainly not where you want to be, nor is the playset of Temple of Epiphany. Tap lands are terrible in a deck like this. But by far, the most egregious exclusion from this deck is that missing 3rd and 4th copy of Arc-like Phoenix. I get it. Arc-like Phoenix is a mythic, and Wizards of the Coast is allergic to reprinting playsets of mythics in their constructed precon decks, but come on, 2 Phoenixes? It's not even that expensive. Honestly, if you took the 2 Expressive Iterations out of this deck and added 2 Arc-like Phoenixes, that change alone would make the deck far more competitive than it currently is, and it is, of course, the first upgrade suggestion that I would offer. Other upgrade suggestions would be adding some Ledger Shredders, Hall of the Storm Giants, and eventually even Galvanic Iteration and Temporal Trespass. Overall, there's still good value here, and the deck is very close, aside from those Phoenixes, to what you'd be playing competitively. Grade is a B-, but it could have so easily been an A. Next up, Dimir Control. This is by far the strangest inclusion of the 4. While the precon does indeed contain some good financial value, there's not really a Dimir Control deck in Pioneer. If Wizards of the Coast wanted to include an option for a control deck, it would have made far more sense to make an Azurius Control precon. That at least would have been representative of what a control strategy looks like in Pioneer. If you play with this Dimir Control deck out of the box, you're going to very quickly run into a pretty big issue. And that issue? Winning the game. This deck plays exactly 5 cards that can technically serve as win conditions. 2 copies of Murderous Rider, 2 copies of Torrential Gearhulk, and 1 single copy of Shark Typhoon. There aren't even win conditions in the sideboard, like you normally would see in a deck like this. Honestly, I don't know how else to put it. This deck is a mess, to put it kindly, and I would not recommend picking it up for any reason other than you need a lot of these cards for a deck in another format or some other purpose. No planeswalkers with win conditions, no creature lands, nor any other method for emerging from the game victorious. And to be clear, the win conditions this deck does include are not very good ones. Murderous Rider especially will virtually never cross the finish line for you. I can't even begin to offer upgrade suggestions for a deck that doesn't exist in the Pioneer meta. Maybe a playset of Shark Typhoons? Maybe some creature lands like Hall of the Storm Giants or Cave of the Eye Tyrant? I came very close to failing this deck, but God, it's got all this financial value. I'm gonna give it a D-. Do not buy it if you're looking to actually play Pioneer. Up next is a deck where Wizards of the Coast either got very, very lucky or they knew something we didn't, which actually is possible. You see, when these decks were developed, Gruul's Stompy wasn't actually in the Pioneer meta, but now it is, and it matches this deck pretty well. You see, with the addition of Carpulsan Forest to the Pioneer format, courtesy of Dominaria United, suddenly the mana for aggressive Gruul decks got a lot better. And now, as of just a few weeks ago, there is indeed a Gruul Stompy-like deck that's been making waves that, much like this precon, has playsets of Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, Scavenging Ooze, Bone Crusher Giant, and Love-Struck Beast. A huge portion of the Gruul Stompy Precon's creature base is a card-for-card copy of this new meta contender. In fact, the only expensive non-land cards the Precon is missing is a playset of Esika's Chariot. As an 8-elf deck, this deck will be one of the more consistent and powerful decks among the Challenger Precons right out of the box. Casting big creatures ahead of schedule is a strong strategy, even if the big creatures you're casting aren't technically the most optimal big creatures around. And it's not as if the non-optimal big creatures in this deck are that bad. Questing Beast and Glorybringer were once Pioneer staples in their own right. As far as upgrades go, get a hold of that playset of Esika's Chariot, as well as playsets of Sky Sovereign, Consul's Flagship, and Reckless Stormseeker, and you're ready to take on some competitive games. Grade here is an A. Yeah, an A. Lastly, we have Orzhov Humans. Humans are the best tribal archetype in Pioneer, and they come in a variety of color combinations. You've got Mono White, Bant, Abzan, and yes, even an Orzhov Humans deck, much like the one in this Precon. The Orzhov Humans Precon is the worst financial value of the bunch by a large margin, but it's also the other best Precon in terms of out-of-the-box playability. In fact, I'd say it's tied with Gruul Stompy. The mana base is great for a 2-color Precon deck thanks to full playsets of Concealed Courtyard and Caves of Koilos, along with the 8 tribal lands in Unclaimed Territory and Secluded Courtyard. Is this a Humans tribal deck or a Courtyard tribal deck? And as far as the creature suite goes, most of the creatures you'd want to see in a Humans deck have shown up. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Thalia's Lieutenant, and Luminarch Aspirant are all the 2-mana creatures that every Humans deck wants. You've also got a nice array of 1-mana creatures and one of the better sideboards among the 2022 Precons. Really, the only card you're missing that doesn't have a replacement version in this deck is Adeline, Resplendent Cathar, which is a shame since the Precon currently has the lowest value in singles reprints, and thus it would have been really easy to cut, say, a few of those Rally the Ranks in order to give us a couple copies of Adeline without putting too much value in the Precon. One of my favorite parts of this Precon, though, is the inclusion of 2 copies of Mutavault. This would have been a very easy thing for Wizards of the Coast to not add to the Precon, given that they're clearly reluctant to put creature lands in this round of Precons. The other 3 Precons don't contain any creature lands, even though all 3 of them absolutely would have benefited from a few copies of creature lands within their colors. Mutavault is pretty expensive for a card that mostly just sees Pioneer play. So if you do plan to upgrade this deck, try and finish out that playset of Mutavaults, pick up 4 copies of Adeline Resplendent, maybe an Extraction Specialist from Streets of New Capenna, and then you're ready to shuffle up and play. Grade is another solid, enthusiastic A. One of the things that may happen here is that this deck, since it has the lowest overall financial value, might actually sell for the least on the secondary market, especially in the weeks to come. If you are interested in getting into Pioneer, keep your eyes peeled on this deck in particular, as there might be a really great pickup available. Final conclusion, 2 solid A's and a B- in that Phoenix deck that is really easy to upgrade into an A means that these Precons are a step up from the original iterations of the Pioneer Challenger decks. I am still disappointed that these decks are being priced at nearly $50, but I guess I need to take that up with the concept of capitalism and not Wizards of the Coast. As it stands, if you're looking to get into Pioneer, picking up any one of these 3 decks except Dimir Control will treat you pretty well, though if you get the Phoenix deck, quickly swap out those 2 expressive iterations for 2 more Arclights. Grades are on the individual decks as stated. Maybe Dimir Control will even be of interest to you to strip for parts, but that is up to you. I hope very much this video has been of some help to you. Do you play Pioneer, and if so, do you plan to pick up one of these decks? Let me know in the comments below. Why aren't there modern event decks? Oh wait, they did one of those once. It did not go well. Should they try again? And remember, whether you are buying cards for Pioneer, Modern, Commander, or even Standard, yeah, people still play. It's actually really good right now. You should check it out. Try and spend your money where you do spend time playing those formats, getting those games, and that is at your local game store. You can't play Magic on Amazon, so when it is reasonable to do so, support your Magic community by supporting that local game store.
shuffle up and play.
Today, we are playing Commander, but it's pre-EDH, which means no Commander pre-con cards whatsoever. We'll be playing Duran, the Siege Tower.
Essentially a 5/5.
It has 0 power.
I'm gonna put 6 mana, Spitting Image.
And you're also supposed to write legibly.
It's like a Rorschach test.
Sheldon, if I defeat you at Commander, do I get to be on the rules committee?
You do not. Brian.
Which?
Brian number 1.
Am I number 1? Am I number 1, or am I the professor? I do not own a Diamond Valley, and I'm wondering if anybody here has any objection if I just take this basic forest and write Diamond Valley on it so that I can play. Does anyone object?